So in the last message, that was 2 weeks ago, we started a new series called Twisted. And I took a little poll by show of hands. How many people thought that their views of romantic relationships were significantly influenced by movie and media? And just about everybody's hand went up for that. So we all have participated in that. The problem with that is that most of the big ideas that Hollywood has about relationships aren't healthy. They're not helpful for us. But they get really popular. And they just end up giving us false expectations that lead us into disappointment and further brokenness. So our goal in this series is to address a few of those popular relationship myths and flip them around so that we can learn from them and actually do something about them that will have God's blessing. So we've got kind of a Disney theme with our background art with this series. Disney princess movies have definitely contributed to that idea of romantic relationships from the movies. And in part one, we looked at the myth of finding your one true love. And that has Disney written all over it. We saw that it's not about finding the one and then living happily ever after. It's more about wisely choosing one and then making sure they're the number two relationship that you're investing in after your relationship with God. So tonight's quote didn't actually come from a Disney movie. It did come from a movie. It's from 1996, which was before some of you were born. It was a melodrama called Jerry Maguire. Has anyone ever heard of that? A few people. It's rated R, so I wouldn't really recommend it for various reasons. But it was starring Tom Cruise and Renee Zellweger and Cuba Gooding Jr. And so there are a few quotes that were made famous by this movie. They might not be famous anymore, but they were for a long time after that. Those quotes were, "Show me the money," "You had me at hello," and then the one that's our quote for tonight, we're going to see a clip about that. The clip ends with the "You had me at hello" line, but tune into the big melodramatic romantic line that's just a little bit before that. So go ahead and play that.
We live in a cynical world. A cynical world. And we work in a business of tough competitors. I love you. You complete me. Not just as
You had me at hello. You had me at hello.
So, you complete me. Oh, go back.
you changed.
Spoilers!
Okay, surprise is given away. All right, so you complete me. It sounds so romantic. I remember that was the popular thinking when that movie came out. All the girls were like, "Oh, Tom Cruise." And now it's probably not the case, but he was 21 years younger at the time. And it's a line that sounds romantic. You complete me. I get it. It speaks to our desire to feel needed, our desire to feel important. In fact, just within the last few days, Heather and I had a discussion about our own relationship and our own marriage and how we can better demonstrate and express those feelings in the right ways. So those are natural feelings. We should feel important. We should feel needed to a certain extent. It's good to express value and worth to our significant other in a way that they can relate with. and we should use care in how those feelings play out and how we express them. But if you complete someone, that's probably not someone you should choose to be with. You should probably run the other way. And unless you've already exchanged vows, then you need to work on that. But just to give a little perspective on this, there was another movie that made reference to the same line. I wonder what that could be. So let's watch that.
There's no going back. You've changed things. Forever. And why do you want to kill me? I don't want to kill you. What would I do without you? Go back to ripping off mob dealers? No, you complete me. You're garbage.
So, the Joker used the same line on Batman, and that's not exactly what you would call a healthy relationship between the two of them. Just imagine in Jerry Maguire if Renee Zellweger would have responded to Tom Cruise with that line, "You're garbage." That would have changed the movie forever.
Do it again.
So here's the truth about this relationship myth. If someone completes me, it means I'm not a whole person by myself. If someone completes me, it means I'm not a whole person by myself. And that should be a huge red flag to both people involved. It means we shouldn't be entertaining the idea of being in a relationship at that point. Listen to what Jesus said about coming together in marriage. And he quoted a couple lines from Genesis. So this is in Mark 10, verses 6 through 9. He said, "But at the beginning of creation, God made them male and female." I'm just quoting Genesis 1. "For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh." That was from Genesis 2. And then Jesus comments on those. He says, "So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate." So Jesus said that when two come together in sexual union, they become one flesh. And God's design is that that's in the context of marriage. But let's have a little math illustration. Where's Mariah? I told her there'd be a math quiz coming up tonight. 1 plus 1 does not equal 1, right? It equals 2. But 1 times 1 does equal 1. So we can have those two becoming one when we multiply them instead of adding them together. But what about when we have two incomplete people coming together? What do you get? What's 1/2 times 1/2? 1/4. So I don't know how far we can take that illustration, but bringing two incomplete people together doesn't complete either one. It just amplifies their incompleteness. Bringing two incomplete people together doesn't make them a complete person. It amplifies their incompleteness. So again, if I'm not a complete person, I shouldn't be entertaining the idea of being in a romantic relationship unless we've already exchanged vows. And Jesus says, what God's joined together, let no one separate. So as we move into the application part, whatever your relationship context, if you think you might be an incomplete person, work on becoming complete. And if you think you're a pretty complete person right now, work on staying there. So we can apply these same principles to stay there. Here's the key to applying this in relationships. Significant others don't bring wholeness. Only God can bring wholeness.
Come on.
Significant others don't bring wholeness. Only God can bring wholeness. So how does that happen? What's God's part? What's my part? What can we do to become whole? What can we do to stay whole? So we're going to look at some action steps from God's Word about what it means to become complete. And before we get there, here's a little personal incentive for each of us to apply this. This is Andy Stanley's advice on relationships. He's a well-known Christian author and speaker, pastor in Atlanta. He says, become the person who you're looking for is looking for. Become the person who you're looking for is looking for. That sounds kind of confusing, but if you want to find a whole person to be in a relationship with, become a whole person yourself, because they're probably looking for the same thing. So we're going to look at 4 steps to help find our wholeness in God. 4 steps to help find our wholeness in God. First thing we need is to understand and respond to the gospel. That's step 1. It's kind of a preliminary step. Understand and respond to the gospel. And many of us have already done that. Some of us still need to take that step. And it's more than just believing in God. It's more than just believing in Jesus. James 2:19 says that even the demons believe in God, and they shudder. It doesn't make them Christians. We need to understand our predicament before God because of our sinful choices. We need to understand what Jesus did about that, and we need to respond to accept the offer of grace that he puts in front of us and commit to him. And the Bible gives us everything we need to know about that. So as we move into a time of personal encounter after the message, I'll give a little more explanation about that. But we do have to cross that starting line. Hebrews 6, verses 1 through 3. Says, so let us stop going over the basic teachings about Christ again and again. Let us go on instead to become mature in our understanding. Surely we don't need to start again with the fundamental importance of repenting from evil deeds and placing our faith in God. You don't need further instruction about baptisms, the laying on of hands, the resurrection of the dead, and eternal judgment. And so, God willing, we will move forward to further understanding. So the word mature here in this passage is from the Greek word teleos, which means it's this idea of maturity and completeness. So this word is exactly what we're talking about, being a complete person. Wholeness is what we're talking about. But we have to cross that line of becoming a Christian before it's even possible to be a whole person. And that's 100% based on what Jesus did. He did all the work, but he asks us to respond to that offer so it applies to us. Once we do cross that line, we begin a lifelong process of allowing the Holy Spirit to begin to mature us and to change us. And that's a process called sanctification. It's a big churchy word. It just means to become more holy and more good over time as the Spirit works in us and as we respond and obey the Spirit. But we'll still make mistakes. But there will be a point where we reach wholeness, not being perfect, but healthy and whole. And that has everything to do with placing our identity in Jesus. So even if we've reached the point of wholeness in Christ, sometimes through situations of high stress or tragedy or just apathy, we can be tempted to start to put our identity and our worth in the wrong things again. And we kind of revert to some immaturity. So it's possible to still be forgiven, but not really whole at the moment. So again, we have to first become a Christian for it to be possible to be a whole person. But let me apply this to romantic relationships. If you're a Christian, don't allow yourself to fall for someone who's not there yet. Guard your heart. Because without Jesus and the Holy Spirit, they're not capable of becoming a whole person yet. And you can save yourself a lot of future grief by just trusting God on this one, even though, just shut the door before it gets that far. So then as a Christian, we might have those ups and downs. We start to put our worth in other things. And so how do we stay whole? How do we get there if we're not there currently? So number 2, trust God with steadfastness. Trust God with steadfastness. Isaiah 26:3 says, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you." And the words perfect peace in this passage in Isaiah are from the Hebrew word shalom, which means peace. It means wholeness. It means completion. So, rephrasing that, you will keep in shalom those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you. That's placing and keeping our sense of identity in God, no matter what happens. That's the steadfastness part. And like that, James 1, verses 2 through 4 says, "Count it pure joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. Let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." And the Greek word for perfect there, that might be kind of intimidating, but that's that same Greek word we looked at earlier. It's called teleos, which doesn't mean without error. It means mature. It means completeness. And the other Greek word here that's we have complete has to do with soundness and wholeness. So it's very similar to the verse in Isaiah. Steadfastness, perseverance, trust in God brings shalom, brings peace, it brings wholeness, completeness. So let's apply this to romantic relationships. If you're not married and think there's a possibility you're not a whole person right now, be steadfast. Wait. Have patience. Be content being single before you throw another life into the mix with yours. And if you cannot be single, if you tend to bounce from relationship to relationship, that should be a huge red flag that maybe we're not putting our identity in Christ, but putting it in Christ. So be steadfast in pursuing God first, trusting that His timing is better than our timing. If you're married and you think you might not be whole right now, be steadfast. Make sure you put your trust and identity in Jesus and not in your spouse. Your spouse cannot give you the things that only God can give you. So, our third step for becoming or staying complete is to love unselfishly. Love unselfishly. Jesus said in Matthew 5, verses 44 through 48, "If I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes His sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? If you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Not even pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect." And again, that word perfect doesn't mean without error. It means complete. It means mature. So why are we talking about loving our enemies when we're supposed to be talking about romantic relationships? There will be times of conflict in any romantic relationship. It won't always be easy to love that person. And likewise, it won't, we're not always going to feel loved by the other person. Selfish love is loving someone only because of the way they make us feel. That's selfish love. And again, that's a sign of immaturity and incompleteness. When we love selfishly, it can be really easy to put our identity in the way that person makes us feel. And then when there's conflict in that relationship, all of a sudden that goes straight into our identity and we're a big hot mess. But when we can love someone when it's hard, when we can love someone for what they need and not just for what we get, that develops maturity and wholeness. Demonstrating unselfish love helps us become mature and complete, imitating the qualities of God that He asks us to imitate. Be perfect, be complete, as your Heavenly Father is complete. And step number 4, use your gifts to build up the church. Use your gifts to build up the church. Now, this point might seem kind of strange, like out of place in this context, but we're looking at things the Bible says that make us complete people. Ephesians 4, verses 11 through 13. So Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, and teachers to equip his people for works of service so that the body of Christ may be built up until we all reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. And guess what? That word mature, it's our same Greek word teleos, which means complete and mature. So it's saying that when we collaborate as a church, when leaders and members come together and are serving, are using our gifts, when we contribute to the mission God's given us, it helps us become mature, complete, and whole. So think about it. If God gives us a spiritual gift, that's part of our complete package. And if we just sit on that gift and never put it into practice, we're taking that part of us and kind of locking it up. And so without that part of us, we're incomplete. But the Apostle Paul says here in Ephesians, when we serve in the church, that leads to our maturity and our completeness. And this can affect potential romantic relationships. And as you serve God, working on being a whole person, you're serving God, and you might look over and see another whole person serving God. And you think, oh, hey, that's a whole person. They love God. They're kind of cute, and et cetera, et cetera. Or as an existing couple, if you're both serving the church, and however God leads you, you don't have to be serving in the same way. But if you're serving in the way that God is your number one and your partner is your number two, like we talked about last week, that's going to bless your relationship. And that's going to help us keep our identity focused on Jesus and not on our boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife. So let's bring it back around to the quote that we started with for our relationship myth. I'd like to take another look at that Jerry Maguire clip, but this time from the perspective of being a complete person.
We live in a cynical world. A cynical world. And we work in a business of tough competitors. I love you. You complete me. And I'm just shut up.
That's my version of how it should have ended. Just shut up at the end. So if you're not married and you get the sense that someone thinks you complete them, don't think Jerry Maguire, think Joker, and run the other direction. And whether you're single, dating, or married, work on being a complete person. Doing your part in putting and keeping your identity in Jesus. Become the person you're looking for is looking for. Next week is our last message of the semester. We'll meet again for finals, but it'll be more of a Christmas celebration. Let seniors and share a little bit. But next week we're going to wrap up this relationship series and looking at another Disney-themed line that is a relationship myth that we can flip around and learn from. So let me pray.